Excellent. Well, welcome everyone to the next Wednesday afternoon sales session. Amy and myself want to just thank you for joining us. Today we're going to continue the conversation about what to do when you sit down with the client. I'm giving Amy the afternoon off, so I will be talking most of the time as well. With that said, why don't we look to jump right in? So last week we talked about basically what to do at the first meeting, the information gathering part. And we're going to briefly review that within this presentation as well, just to give you guys a little heads up. So to start off, obviously you need to find a prospect that is going to sit down with you, and there are a couple different ways to do it. There are a lot of different prospecting methods out there. We're just going to use and run with today the one that DMI has initiated beginning of this year, where we're asking the target market prospect, which would be the retirees and pre-retirees, to answer one question. And that one question is, how concerned are you in retirement about running out of money, healthcare costs, or leaving a legacy? And most likely, when you get a response, they're going to say they're worried about at least one of them. And in a perfect world, that conversation will lead to an appointment. And once it leads to an appointment, from there, the question is, what do you do once you have that appointment? So there are two ways that currently most of our advisors are running the appointment. They're either doing it virtually or they're doing it in person. Now, virtually, as we have told you guys, we have created, or we do have, a marketing piece basically on how to run a Zoom meeting. So if that's something you'd like a copy of that, just let us know and we can get that out to you. If you're gonna, I know some parts of the country are sort of starting to open up from the coronavirus. So if you're going to go out and do a person-to-person meeting, I would just say think outside the box. Perfect example is maybe you keep one or two lawn chairs in your trunk and just bring them to the appointment, sit in the client's backyard or front yard or wherever, and just have a conversation there. Because you're out in the open, it might be a little bit chilly depending on where you are, but you make do with what you have. But again, the key is that everyone says that they're the best agent, they're the best advisor out there. What you want to be is you want to be the one who's different, because the one who's different is the one that people are going to gravitate to and end up sitting down with. So that's the key. So during the initial appointment, and this is what we went over in a lot more detail last week. What we want to do with that first appointment is get information from the client. You want to talk 20% of the time, and you want the client to talk 80% of the time. And you want to do that by starting off by building a relationship. From there, you need to find pain. Once you find the pain and review it with the client, you need to give them homework. And once you give them homework, then the first meeting is pretty much wrapped up and you will set the second meeting. So let's just go into really quickly each one of these. So let's start with building a relationship. And what you want to do is when you first go in there, you need to identify as soon as possible if the prospect is either a talker or a non-talker. Now, by talker, that's usually broken down into two separate categories. You have the socializer, that's sort of like the salesperson. You have the supporter. I would equate them for maybe like a social worker type who's trying to help everyone. Those are the ones that you can continue conversations with, talk about the kids, any pets they may have along those lines. So it's much easier to build a relationship with the talkers. The non-talkers, the directors are like the CEOs, and the thinkers are your engineer types that are a lot more difficult to build a relationship because they just want to get to the facts and get to why you're there. First thing you want to do when you sit down with them, after you build a relationship is just ask them, I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me. How much time do you have to talk tonight? And you're going to use that to gauge if you need to jump in everything quick, or you can take your time to ask them a lot of different open-ended questions. And then ask the 2 questions. These are the 2 starting questions you should be asking with every single prospect that you sit down with. First question is, what are you looking to accomplish today? And then be quiet. Let them tell you, because they may have a different idea of what they want to get done today than you do. So ask them, what are you looking to accomplish today? And then stop talking. Once they start answering it, then you ask the second question. Well, can you tell me a little bit more about that? To go a little bit deeper. Again, the key is we're trying to locate or identify different pains. And we do that by asking open-ended questions. We have a handout. We have a couple handouts that are very, very germane to the presentation today that are currently in our marketing department, and we should be getting those back in about a week or so. All the content is done. They're just putting it up for us, so to speak. But the key is, once you ask the open-ended questions, then what you want to do is listen for those pain words, because these will be indicative of real pain that they have. And in no particular order, mad, frustrated, worried, they're upset, they're tired of this, they're excited about this, they're anxious of this, or they're concerned about this. Those are the types of buzz pain words you should be listening for. Now, ideally, you want to keep digging until you identify 3 to 5 pains. Now, that isn't always, you're not always able to do that, but you need to identify at least 1 pain. And I keep telling Amy that I'm going to trademark this saying, but no pain, no help, no client. If you can't identify the pain and then come up with a solution to that pain, there's no chance you're going to get a client. So that's the key. Again, we're not showing you really a turnkey approach. It's more of a structured process on taking the prospect through the process to eventually become a client. Because we know people buy one of 2 reasons: pain, pleasure, or people say greed or fear, whatever you want to call it, whether it's pain now, pain later, or pleasure now or pleasure later. So the key is locate those pains. And once you locate those pains, what you want to do is then at that point, you have them on board. You want to give them homework. So you want to talk about what you're going to do to help alleviate or mitigate those pain or pains. And from there, you want to give them the pertinent paperwork to collect. That's sort of like their financial statements, whether it's life insurance statement, 401k, maybe a brokerage account. And we're going to have a handout that goes through all the different types of statements that they should get, and whether they make a copy of it or give you the original, doesn't make a difference. There's also an asset worksheet, which more goes through what their current assets are and gives you a better idea of what you have to work with. Because most of the time, if we're going to alleviate or mitigate a pain, it's going to be by repositioning some of their assets. And then say, for example, that they say that they're worried about running out of money in retirement, which, by the way, is the #1 concern of retirees. At that point, we also have an expense worksheet that we went over last week. It separates the expenses between essential and discretionary, sort of like their bills and their play expenses. So we would separate those. If it's apropos to give that out, that's fine. But you always want to give out the pertinent paperwork for them to collect, as well as the asset worksheet. And then also reiterate, why are you handing them this homework, and why is it so important that they fill it out? Because if they don't fill it out, you're pretty much, you're walking blind here on how you can help them take care of their pain. And at that point, you've given them their homework. You've figured out one or two pains. You've gone over a pain or two with them. So you want to set the next appointment. Ideally, perfect time to do it is same time, 7 days from now. If you go more than 10 days, then it sort of becomes out of sight, out of mind. They sort of get on to something else, and you are no more important to them as anything else that comes along. So you always want to make sure you make it no more than 10 days, ideally 7 days, because you want to give them enough time to find everything and fill out the homework. And then before you leave, what you want to do is review the expectations for the second meeting. Hey, Mr. Prospect, when we get together, we're just going to go through the pains that we've identified, your challenges that we've identified today. We're going to reiterate, how important that pain is and how important it is for you to fill out the homework. Then, Mr. Client or Mr. Prospect, next week, I'm going to ask you again, what are you looking to accomplish at the second meeting? Whether you have them answer now or have them answer next week, it doesn't really make a difference. But make sure that you're teeing up the second meeting. Review the goals for the second meeting, and then finally ask them if they have any other questions or concerns, because they may have other questions or concerns that you can address. But once you've gone all through that, then you end the first meeting. Ideally, you're coming back exactly a week later. You sit down with them, do a tiny bit of relationship building, then jump right into it. Remember last week we went over this, that, and this. So let me ask you this, Mr. Prospect. Today, what are you looking to accomplish? Again, be quiet. Things may have changed, or they may reiterate what their pain or their challenge is. Then make sure you look at your notes from last week. Make sure you review what their words are and their pains are. Again, ask them if anything has changed. If nothing has changed, it's time to move on to collecting the homework. And what you'll find is that the first appointment can be pretty lengthy because you're doing a lot of listening and asking open-ended questions. The second appointment tends to be a little bit shorter, because you're reviewing the homework that you gave them, you're collecting it, and then you're basically just going into what's going to happen next. And at that point, you're going to tell them, I'm going to bring this back to the office. I'm going to go through it, disseminate it, and see if we can come up with a plan of action to address and mitigate the pains or any sort of challenges that you have. And then once you get the agreement from them, ask them, again, do you have any other questions or concerns that we can address? They may or they may not. Once you're finished with that, then you book the third appointment. Again, very similar. If you can do it exactly 1 week later, that would be perfect. But the key is what you want to do is tee it up in that first meeting, first appointment, identify the pain. Second appointment, collect the homework. And one little caveat to that, you'll find that every now and again, you're going to have a client that is so into getting everything done that they're going to do all their homework and then they're going to email it over to you between the first and the second appointment. And if that happens, that's great. At that point, you actually are bypassing the whole second appointment and you're trying to come up with a game plan for them on how they can mitigate or lessen their pains during the second appointment. And what you'll find is by using this type of approach or process, it really turns into a 3-appointment close, so to speak. Now, obviously, sometimes it's going to be 2 appointments. Obviously, sometimes it's going to be 4 or 5. You may get those clients, well, this is great, but I need to think about this. Well, that's fine. You don't want to sit and, beat them over the head and say, no, you need to buy this today. You want them to make an informed and comfortable decision about moving forward. So that's really what we're looking to accomplish today. Just expand on the first meeting of what you want to do first meeting, what you want to do second meeting, teeing up the third meeting. So again, reiterate, have the initial conversation, have the first appointment, no pain, no help, no client. And you'll probably hear me say more this quote over the next few months. Give them homework, set the second appointment. At the second appointment, collect the homework and review the pains. Make sure nothing has changed. And then set the third appointment. And here is probably the most important slide here. When you get back to the office after the second appointment, review it. Come up with a game plan and then leverage DMI. Give myself or Amy or whomever, give us a call so we can go through everything with you. We can probably come up with a great game plan in conjunction with you and show you how to position it for the third appointment. Because the third appointment is all about reviewing their pain, showing them a solution to their pain, and getting their buy-in. And again, they may say at that point on the third appointment, hey, let's do it. Let's take an application or two. Or they may need to go back and think about it and read over it. Either is fine. You just want to make sure that if they don't want to move forward at the third appointment, that you make sure you've answered any questions or concerns that they have. You don't want them just going back, thinking about it for 5 minutes, and then again, out of sight, out of mind. So make sure they have all the information, all their questions are answered, because if they understand the pain, they understand the solution, you have a much, much better chance. It exponentially goes up that they're going to move forward with whatever game plan or ideas you've come up with. So with that said, that's what we're looking, like I said, to accomplish today, is really go through the first, second, and to a lesser extent, I can't really go through the third appointment because that's going to really depend on what game plan you put together. So I'm going to go back to my Nespresso and see if we do have any questions today. Amy, feel free to add anything you want.
Now you all know, because I'm still recovering, so now I apologize for the coughing, but now you know I let Jim decided to talk today because it's way easier for him than me. If anybody's got any questions, feel free to chime in right now, whether it's life, annuity, long-term care. If you don't feel comfortable asking in this format, you can email us, you can call us, whatever you'd like to do, we're here to help you.
All right, I believe that Mr. Dandridge does have a question. Let's see. Okay, looks like he likes to get his likes to show his face. So John, are you there?
Hey John, you're muted. You're on mute, John. There we go.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. On that third meeting with them,
Yes.
are you closing? Are you saying, giving any statements to indicate that you're closing to them? Or what are you doing after you've showed them the game plan?
Yeah, at the third meeting, John, what we're looking to do more than anything is give them all the information for them to make an informed decision. In a perfect world, they're going to want to move forward. So ideally, yes, it's going to be more of a close, and we can go, if you wanted to go over different closing techniques, we can absolutely take that offline. But if you've given them, you're reviewing the pain, you're giving them a solution and seeing what their thoughts are. A good portion of the time, they're going to want to move forward. Some of the time, they're going to want to, think about it, so to speak. And again, either's fine.
Yeah, the reason why I asked is a lot of times when they want to think about it, that's a big gap in between the actual closing, and it gives them time to back off, is what I'm saying.
Everyone's different, you know, and it's sort of an art form, closing anyway. So
Right.
sometime you may want to say to them, you know, that's great. What do you want to think about? You know, ask an open-ended question, because they may say, well, I want to think about this or this. You may be able to answer it right then and there, and it can take care of it. So,
Mhm.
you know, sometimes you want to nip it in the bud. Sometimes they truly want to think about the engineer types. They want to take it back. They want to look at all the information. It really has nothing to do with that they're really not interested. They're just blowing smoke. Um, Again, depends on the different type of person that you're
Yeah.
working with.
The engineer people like to rip it apart.
Yep.
And get in the weeds.
Yeah.
Now, if you have, say, the CEO type, and they say that they want to think about it, well, that's a red flag right there. That's basically telling you, okay, this CEO type, you know, they're an A-type personality that if they wanted to buy it, they would say, let's do it right then and there. So that's
Mm.
why it's so important up front. I mean, I can't tell you how important that first meeting is, between identifying their pain and discovering what their personality type is. Because you can get a better idea when they give you pushback, whether it's truly pushback or they're just trying to get you off the call or out of their home and then never call you back again. And again, the CEO types, they're going to say yes right then and there. And if they say I need to think about it, then that's pretty much you need to do some backtracking, so to speak.
Mhm.
Let's see. A gentleman, Ted, said at the third meeting, if they wanted to think about it, where was my mistake? Well, you know what, Ted? It's not necessarily your mistake. It again, get back to what we just said. It will depend on the type of personality the person is. If you have a CEO type and they want to think about it, then I would say you haven't identified the pain enough or reviewed it enough to them where they think that your solution is worth it, so to
Mhm.
speak. So again, that's why, you know, you may have read or heard about this in sales training before, the 4 different personalities, but it can become really important depending on the type of pushback or the type of questions you get. And again, I said, you know, it used to be when we can go visit people, you know, when I would go into a prospect's office and I'd go in and I'd look for pictures of the family. If I would see pictures of the family, that's usually a good indication that you have a talker. Not always, but usually. And you can build that rapport for a while. But if there are no pictures of anyone there, most likely you have an engineer type or possibly a CEO type, and you just got to get to the business right then and there. So I can't reiterate, the first meeting sets the tone for everything. If you don't identify that pain, it makes it so much more difficult for them to move forward purchasing something from you. So, oh, looks like we have another one. Oh, Ted is rolling today. Do you ever pre-qualify people who come in for a visit? You absolutely can. Everyone's different. You know, I used to pre-qualify people to a bloop in my face sometimes. You know, again, the first meeting and the closing are more art form than anything else. You got to get good at it. You get good at it by practicing it, whether it's in front of people or just practice it at home in front of the mirror of just asking questions in your mind. Ask a question and think in your mind, well, what type of answer would they give? And then ask another question. Keep digging. The more open-ended questions you ask and they answer, the better chance you have of finding out what the real pain is. Because usually the first thing they tell you is not the real pain. It's just, you know, that's what they say to sort of make them feel better, so to speak. There's a lot of different, you know, a lot of art form, a lot of different things. To me, the easiest thing about the process is coming up with what the solution is to their pain. Because that's just, you know, Okay, they're afraid of running out of money. Okay, let's take their essential expenses, cover it with something that is fully guaranteed that is never going to run out. And the discretionary expenses, we want to go over something that maybe addresses inflation risk as well as market of return risk. Things like that are not difficult, but the art form of knowing how to close, depending on the personalities, as well as the initial appointment, they're just so much more important than everything else. Oh, we do have one more. Oh, Ted just says thanks.
You're welcome, Ted.
You're very welcome, Ted. Our goal is to give you some tools that you can use in the field. If you get one thing out of today, it was worth it for us.
Yep.
And if you want to have, say, one-on-one or one-off type conversations about what we've talked about today, just let us know. That's what we're here for.
More than happy to help.
Yeah, our goal is to get you in front of more qualified prospects. And when you do, knowing what to say and knowing how to leverage DMI to help the client mitigate their risk or their pain. Because if you can mitigate their pain, whatever product takes care of it, that's what you go with. So it seems like there are no other questions. And look at that. We are just about at the bottom of the hour. So I would want to thank everyone for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone.